Okay, here's our Boulevard Lake scene again. You'll notice the colors are subdued. So the last little movie we looked at how to improve the brightness, the contrast. So I'm going to use my levels again, and I'm going to bring those up just by dragging the sliders over to the edges of where the information is in the histogram. Okay, now that looks better already. It is a low res image, that's why it's a little pixelated. Under image adjustments, this next group here mostly deals with color, so vibrance, hue, saturation, color balance. I'm going to go through a couple of them pretty quickly. They're really just fun to play with. You go in, you try it, you sort of see what jives with you and use them from there. The ones all down through here are mostly, what's the word, polite way of putting it, they're more artsy, more kind of creative, a little out there. And probably if you're a high-end user, you find ways to use these with some of the more difficult techniques. So we're going to focus mostly on these 9 for the first little while here. We've done the first 4 in the last video, so I'm going to look at something like vibrance. You know, anytime you have 2 sliders, that's a good thing for learning, because all you do is you just drag them to the sides and see what changes. And if you like it, you keep it. If you don't, you just back it off a bit until you find what you like. Vibrance deals mostly with the 3 primary colors. I think it's what, red, green, blue, or is it yellow? It doesn't matter. It only deals with 3 colors primarily, so those are the ones that's going to crank up, whereas saturation deals with all colors. You'll notice the boats and things start to glow a little bit more here. So if I'm happy with that, there's my picture. I've got lots of color. It's a little brighter. I can go back to the open and take a look at it. So that's applying a levels and then a saturation or a vibrance, so making all the colors pop. If I want to try and make it look a little better, I can use the dodge and burn tool over here. I'm going to use burn, and I'm just going to bring the sky down a little bit. You have to watch how much you burn. I just want to get it a little closer into balance, and I'm kind of happy with that. So there it is, a little bit too bright. There's bringing it down. It's a little bit more subdued. The only thing I don't like is this car down here, or this truck. I could try and clone it out, or I can use my crop tool here, and I'll just reposition the picture. I'll do that, and you'll notice I've got my rule of thirds here turned on. If I want to use a grid, I can use the grid. I like the rule of thirds because I think like a photographer. And I'm just going to crop that in a little tighter, something like that. Hit enter, and there's my final image. So if I'm on my history palette, I can turn on a picture here, and notice it takes a snapshot. So there's what I started with, there's what I finished with, a little nicer, a little cleaner. So I'm going to go back to levels, and I'm going to try some of these other ones. So if I go image, adjustments, hue, saturation, saturation again is just going to bring up the color or drop the color. Okay, so I'm going to bring it up a little bit. Hue is kind of a neat one to play with because you can change the overall effect, and it can get pretty funky. So there's some super greens and purples. What is nice to play with is sometimes it's colorized. If you click on this, you can create the sepia effect, or that old school sort of old photo look. You can also do the cold look. Where's the blues? In here. And again, it's just, this is applied right to that layer. It changes the color, and that's the way it goes. So next week we'll be looking at some non-destructive testing. All of this is permanent. Once you click OK and hit save, these are done. We can also change the lightness if you want to play with that a little bit within this hue and saturation option. I'm going to back up to levels again and do one more, and I'll leave the rest for you to play with. Black and white, maybe I'll do 2 more. Black and white's kind of cool. It makes it into a black and white image, and then you can change independent colors. Okay, so if I want to make the trees a little brighter, see how the changing different sliders affects things. You can make things darker or lighter. And so it's just grabbing those colors and changing them under a black and white filter. So we could hit OK on that and leave it. And the last one, you can play with photo filter. It's fairly straightforward. Is channel mixer, and you'll notice there's red, green, and blue channels. There's different options up here as well. Just try playing with the sliders. If you move the red slider down and the green slider up, what happens? If you move the blue down and the green further up, How does it balance off? What looks different? You have your constant here. Okay, and again, it throws everything kind of out of whack. We'll just put that back to 0. You can go to a monochrome or a black and white just by clicking on there. And again, you can play with the channels to see how things interact. And that's another option for you. Okay, and then the rest. Okay, invert flips it into a photo negative. And you can just go through and play with some of them. Posterize, threshold, gradient, map. I do like the shadows and highlights. I find it's a nice way of helping to bring up shadows, lowering them. Okay, and you can just, again, you try sliders, you move them all the way across to see what happens. Decide what you like and what you don't like. It's all about playing. That's what Photoshop is as you learn it. So the more you play, the more you learn, and the more often you play, the more you retain. So there's a couple of image adjustments. It is important to notice that those apply to that layer. And when we start introducing other layers, the image adjustments apply only to the layer. This is the only one we have, so it looks like it's applied to everything. But when we get more layers, you'll notice that it only applies to that one singular level. And we'll get to that shortly.